The great hall of Kepler Station buzzed with nervous energy. 12 different alien species had gathered for the most important meeting in galactic history. Ambassador Zixthara floated above her crystal chair, her transparent body flickering with colors that showed her deep worry. She had called this emergency session, and every representative knew something terrible was happening. Captain Jake Morrison sat alone in a clear energy cage at the center of the room. He looked confused and tired. Just 3 days ago, he had been exploring a new solar system with his ship, the New Horizons. Now he was trapped here, surrounded by creatures he had never seen before. The aliens stared at him like he was the most dangerous thing in the universe. Dr. Dolelaire approached the viewing screen with shaking tentacles. The squid-like scientist had spent 2 days studying the human prisoner. What he found in Jake's blood, bones, and brain scans made him sick with fear. He pressed a button, and holographic images filled the air above the assembled aliens. "Look at these readings," Dr. Velinar said, his voice trembling through the universal translator. "This creature's muscle density is 3 times higher than any known species. His bone structure could withstand impacts that would kill most of us instantly. But that's not the worst part." The screen changed to show Jake's brain scans. Red and orange colors pulsed through different sections, highlighting areas that glowed with frightening activity. His mind shows constant aggression patterns. Even when resting, his brain plans for violence. He thinks about fighting, hunting, and killing without even knowing it. This is not learned behavior. This is how his species evolved to think. A collective gasp ran through the assembly. The Gentle Ones, a race of peaceful plant creatures, swayed in their seats like they might faint. Their leader, Peace Singer Humtal, spoke in a whisper that barely registered on the translators. "Are you saying this creature is a natural killer?" "Worse," Dr. Velinar replied. "He's a pack hunter. Look at these social bonding chemicals in his blood. He's programmed to work with others of his kind to hunt prey. But unlike other pack hunters we know, he can also think independently. He can plan, adapt, and change tactics while coordinating with his pack." Ambassador Zixthara's body turned a deep red color, the crystal equivalent of going pale with fear. She gestured to another alien at the far end of the room. This being looked like it was made of pure light, shifting and flowing like liquid. "Starfire, Luminos of the Ethereal Collective has something to share with us all," she announced. The energy being pulsed brighter and began to speak in a voice that sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "We are old, older than most species in this galaxy. In our ancient archives, we found records that we hoped were just myths. Stories passed down from the first civilizations that ever reached the stars. Holographic text appeared in the air, written in symbols so old that the translation computers struggled to read them. Slowly, words formed that every alien in the Vithung room could understand. Beware the apex predators. They come from worlds of death, where only the strongest survive. They know no peace, only the hunt. They consume all they touch, leaving nothing but silence behind." Lumianos continued. The ancient texts described creatures that evolved on planets so violent that simply being born there was a test of survival. They fought not just other species, but their own world. Weather, earthquakes, floods, fires, everything on their planet tried to kill them. Only the most dangerous survived. Jake Morrison shifted in his cage, unaware that his simple movement to stretch his back sent waves of terror through the watching aliens. They saw a predator testing the strength of his prison. The old records say these creatures turned their entire planet into a training ground for war, Leminos added. They fought each other, their environment, and everything that lived alongside them. By the time they reached the stars, they had become the perfect killing machines. Dr. Velinar pulled up another screen showing Jake's medical data. This specimen shows signs of exactly that kind of evolution. His immune system fights diseases that don't even exist yet. His muscles are designed for burst power and endurance. His reflexes are faster than our best warriors. And his pain tolerance is beyond measurement. The Crystalline Collective's military advisor, General Clackstar, spoke up from his position near the door. His rock-like body was covered in natural armor, and he commanded respect from every species present. I've reviewed the combat assessments. If this single creature were released in this room, he could kill half of us before we could stop him. And that's assuming he has no weapons and doesn't know our weaknesses. But he seems so calm, whispered Peace Singer Humtal. He's not trying to hurt anyone. Ambassador Zixthara's color shifted to a sickly yellow. That's what terrifies me most. According to our scouts, his entire species believes they are peaceful explorers. They think they're friendly. They have no idea what they really are. The room fell silent, except for the hum of the station's life support systems. Every alien present realized they were looking at confirmation of their oldest nightmares. The legends were true. The destroyers had found them. And the most terrifying part was that the destroyers called themselves humans, and they thought they came in peace. The red sun of New Texas cast long shadows across the dusty plains as Marine Sergeant Lisa Brooks led her patrol through the settlement. The morning air was thick with radiation that would cook most alien species in minutes, but Lisa barely noticed. She was more concerned about the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Lightning flickered between them, promising another of the planet's famous acid rain storms. "Looks like we're in for some weather," said Private Rick Stone, adjusting his pack straps. He pointed to the approaching clouds with casual interest, as if discussing what to have for lunch. "Nothing we can't handle," Lisa replied. "Just another Tuesday on New Texas." Neither of them noticed the small observation craft hovering high. Above, its occupants watching their every move with growing horror. Inside the alien vessel, Peace Singer Humtal and his survey team from the Gentle Ones recorded everything. They had come to assess the human threat level, expecting to find a species struggling to survive on this hostile world. Instead, they discovered something far worse. "The radiation readings are climbing," whispered Survey Leader Colmer, his plant-like body trembling. "How are they still alive down there?" "Look at their equipment," added Datakeeper Pixtall. "Those suits they wear provide minimal protection. They're walking through radiation that would sterilize our homeworld, and they're complaining about rain." On the ground below, Lisa's patrol reached the edge of the settlement just as the first drops of acid rain began to fall. The liquid that could eat through most known metals splashed harmlessly off their basic rain gear. The humans didn't run for shelter. They didn't panic. They pulled up their hoods and kept walking. "Sergeant Brooks, we've got visitors," came a voice over Lisa's radio. "Colony Administrator Carol White wants you back at headquarters." "Something about first contact," Lisa sighed. "Copy that." "Patrol, we're heading back." The aliens in the observation craft watched the humans turn around and walk back through the acid rain like it was ordinary water. Survey Leader Colmer made notes with shaking tendrils. "They treat planetary hazards as minor inconveniences," he recorded. "The acid rain that destroyed our probe last week is not even worth commenting on to them." At the colony headquarters, Dr. Amy Watson was preparing for the most important presentation of her career. The Gentle Ones had agreed to a face-to-face meeting, and she wanted to make humanity look as peaceful as possible. She had prepared a nice historical overview of Earth, complete with pictures of flowers, puppies, and happy families. When the alien delegation arrived in their heavily shielded environmental suits, Amy greeted them with her biggest smile. The Gentle Ones flinched at the sight of her teeth, but she didn't notice. "Welcome to New Texas," Amy said cheerfully. "We're so excited to meet you." I've prepared a presentation about humanity that I think you'll find very interesting. Peace Singer Humtal's translator made squeaking noises as he tried to speak. We are honored by your welcome. Please, show us about your people. Amy activated her holographic display, and the first image appeared. It showed a beautiful view of Earth from space, blue and green and peaceful. The aliens relaxed slightly. This is our homeworld, Earth, Amy began. As you can see, it's a lovely place where our species evolved over millions of years. The next image showed early humans hunting mammoth with stone spears. The aliens stiffened. Here, we see our ancestors learning to work together to bring down prey much larger than themselves. Amy continued, oblivious to the growing panic in her audience. Notice how they coordinate their attacks and use tools to overcome their natural disadvantages. Survey leader Colmer's leaves turned pale green. In his species culture, showing images of killing was considered deeply disturbing. But Amy was just getting started. Of course, Earth wasn't always an easy place to live, she said, as the display showed a volcanic eruption. Our planet went through many difficult periods. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, magnetic pole reversals. Each one killed off most life on the planet, but somehow our ancestors always survived. The images kept coming. Saber-toothed. Cats with fangs longer than most aliens' entire bodies. Cave bears that could crush bones with their bite. Venomous snakes, poisonous spiders, and sharks with teeth like daggers. We shared our world with all sorts of interesting creatures, Amy explained happily. Many of them saw us as food, so we had to learn to be very creative to stay alive. Data keeper Pixtall was frantically taking notes. Creative. They call developing hunting strategies to fight apex predators being creative. Amy clicked to the next section of her presentation. Human civilization really took off once we learned agriculture. Of course, we still had to deal with regular disasters. Earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, plagues, and wars. But each challenge just made us stronger and more adaptable. The display showed images of humans rebuilding cities after earthquakes, sailing through hurricane-force winds, and crossing frozen wasteland that looked more hostile than most alien homeworlds. The wonderful thing about humans is that we never give up, Amy said with pride. No matter how bad things get, we find a way to survive and even thrive. We turn every disaster into a learning experience. Peace Singer Humtal was making soft, whimpering sounds that his translator couldn't process. Everything this human called normal childhood development or character building would have ended his species' civilization. Any questions? Amy asked brightly. Survey leader Colmer managed to speak through his terror. Your planet tried to kill you constantly? Oh yes, Amy replied. Still does, actually. That's why colonies like New Texas feel so comfortable. The radiation, acid rain, and poisonous atmosphere remind us of home. She gestured toward the window, where lightning was striking the ground outside with enough energy to power most alien cities. See? Just like the good old days. The Gentle One's delegation excused themselves as quickly as politeness allowed. As their ship lifted off from New Texas, Peace Singer Humtal sent an emergency transmission to the Galactic Council. We have confirmed our worst fears, he reported, his voice shaking. The humans are not just from a death world. They are from the death world. A planet so hostile that surviving there turned them into living weapons. They consider planetary disasters to be character-building experiences and good practice. He paused to gather his courage for the next part. The most terrifying thing is that they think this is normal. They have no idea that their homeworld would kill most galactic species in minutes. To them, New Texas is a pleasant vacation spot that reminds them of the good times back home. The transmission ended, leaving the Galactic Council to contemplate a species so adapted to violence that they colonized Deathworlds for the nostalgia. Commander Ryan Parker studied the mission briefing on his tablet as the USS Starfire cruised through the Void Sector. 3 ships from the Hive Collective had gone missing in this area over the past month. No distress signals, no wreckage, just empty space where advanced vessels used to be. Any theories about what happened to them? Asked Lieutenant Kate Sullivan from the navigation station. Her fingers danced across the controls as she fine-tuned their search pattern. Could be pirates, suggested Corporal Ben Davis from his security post. Or maybe they hit some kind of space anomaly. Dr. Alex Turner looked up from his science console, frowning at the readings. I'm not picking up any signs of weapons fire or debris. It's like they just vanished. Ryan had served with his crew for 2 years. They worked together like parts of a well-oiled machine, each knowing what the others would do before they did it. It was something the Hive Collective had never learned to appreciate about human teamwork. Contact on sensors, Kate announced. It's big, Commander, really big. The main screen lit up with an image that made them all pause. Floating in the darkness was a massive structure that looked like a twisted cathedral made of bone and metal. Organic curves blended with mechanical precision in ways that hurt to look at. That's not in any of our databases, Alex said, running scans. But I'm reading life signs inside, lots of them, including the missing Hive ships, Kate added. They're attached to the structure like flies in a spider web. Ryan made his decision quickly. Ben, prep the boarding equipment. Kate, find us a docking point that won't trigger any alarms. Alex, I want to know everything about that thing before we go over there. What they discovered was worse than pirates or anomalies. The structure belonged to the parasitic swarm, a species that fed on conscious thought itself. They captured ships not for their cargo or technology, but for the minds of their crews. Hidden cameras throughout the alien structure recorded what happened next. These recordings would later become classified intelligence, shared only among the highest levels of galactic governments. The human boarding party split up without discussion. Ryan and Kate went left, while Ben and Alex went right. No orders were given, no complex planning session. They just knew what to do. This is wrong, whispered Observer Thekanal to his fellow watchers. Individuals cannot coordinate without central control. The Hive Collective proved that organized thought requires unity, but the humans were proving the opposite. Ryan's team found the captured Hive vessels, while Ben's team located the parasitic swarm's feeding chambers. They shared information through quick radio bursts, adapting their plans in real time. The Hive Collective had fallen to the parasitic swarm because their shared consciousness became a weakness. When the parasites infected one mind, they infected them all. The entire species thought as one, so corrupting that one thought destroyed everything. Humans were different. Each person was an individual, impossible to control completely. When the parasitic swarm tried to invade Ryan's mind, they found a consciousness that fought back with strategies they had never encountered. Kate, they're in my head, Ryan said. Over the radio, his voice strained but still clear. Some kind of mental attack. Copy that, Commander, Kate replied. I'm seeing the same thing. It feels like they're trying to make me give up. But humans had evolved to resist despair. Every disaster in their history had taught them that giving up meant death. The mental attacks that had broken the Hive Collective only made the humans. Angry. Ben found the parasitic swarm's central feeding chamber, where dozens of the slug-like creatures were draining energy from captured aliens. The sight would have terrified most species. Ben just got to work. Alex, I've got eyes on the bad guys, he reported. Looks like they don't handle direct confrontation very well. The parasitic swarm had never faced a species that fought while being mentally attacked. They were used to prey It collapsed under psychological pressure. Humans turned psychological pressure into fuel for violence. Alex discovered the station's weakness by accident. While scanning the structure's power systems, he noticed that the mental parasites were sensitive to sudden electrical discharges. Information that would save thousands of lives across the galaxy. "Commander, I think I know how to hurt these things," Alex transmitted. "If we overload their feeding systems, it should give everyone a chance to escape." The rescue mission became a rout. The humans didn't just free the captured aliens. They systematically destroyed every feeding chamber, disabled the station's mobility systems, and left the parasitic swarm helpless in the void. Observer the canal recorded everything with growing terror. They coordinate without central control. They fight while under mental attack. They adapt their tactics faster than we can track them. The rescued Hive Collective drones were barely functional, their shared consciousness shattered by the parasitic feeding, but they had seen enough to understand what had saved them. Individual minds, one of them whispered to Observer the canal. Each human thinks alone, but acts together. We cannot comprehend how this is possible. As the Starfire departed with the rescued ships, Ryan reviewed the mission report. To him, it had been a routine rescue operation with some unusual complications. The mental attacks had been annoying, but nothing his crew couldn't handle. He had no idea that hidden observers were already transmitting emergency reports to governments across the galaxy. The footage of humans fighting while under psychic assault would become the stuff of nightmares for species that had never encountered such resistance. "Sector Command, this is Starfire," Ryan reported. "Mission accomplished. All missing personnel recovered. We also dealt with the pirates responsible for the disappearances." Pirates. That's what he called a species that had terrorized this sector of space for decades. To Ryan Parker and his crew, the parasitic swarm had been just another problem to solve. Observer Decknell sent his final report as the human ship disappeared into hyperspace. They hunt in packs while maintaining individual thought. They resist mental domination through sheer force of will. They turn every weakness into a weapon. He paused, struggling to find words for what he had witnessed. They are not just pack hunters. They are evolution's answer to every form of predation we know. And they do not even realize what they are. The recording ended, leaving the galaxies. Intelligence agencies to contemplate a species that hunted the hunters and dominated the dominators, all while thinking they were simply helping out their neighbors. Dr. Nina Rodriguez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she checked her equipment one more time. The research station on Kepler 442b was supposed to be a quiet assignment studying animal migration patterns. Instead, she and her partner Dr. Sam Mitchell had stumbled into something that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. "The readings are getting stronger," Sam said, adjusting his scanner. "Whatever's got the local wildlife spooked is definitely heading this way." Nina nodded, watching the horizon through her binoculars. For 3 days now, every animal on the planet had been running in the same direction, away from something in the northern mountains. The creatures moved with the desperate panic of prey being hunted. "There," she pointed to a dust cloud in the distance. "Something's coming." What emerged from the dust looked like a flock of silver birds, but as they got closer, Nina could see they were actually beings of pure energy held together by technology. They moved with impossible grace, their forms shifting and flowing like liquid mercury. "First contact protocol," Sam said, reaching for his radio. "We should report this immediately." Before he could call it in, the energy beings landed near their research station. One of them approached, its form solidifying into something roughly humanoid but still clearly alien. "We are the fleeting ones," it said in a voice like wind through crystals. "We seek shelter from the stalkers. You must flee with us or die." Nina and Sam exchanged glances. They had trained for first contact scenarios, but nothing had prepared them for refugees. "What are these stalkers?" Nina asked. The fleeting one's form rippled with what might have been fear. "They hunt across star systems. They track prey for years, decades, centuries. They never stop, never tire, never give up. Once they choose a target, escape is impossible." "How long have they been chasing you?" Sam asked. 47 years, the being replied. "We have run from world to world, but they always find us. They are patient. They are relentless. They are death itself." Over the next few hours, more fleeting ones arrived. Each told the same story. The stalkers had been hunting their species for generations, wearing them down through sheer persistence. The fleeting ones survived by never staying in one place too long, always moving, always running. "We cannot fight them," explained their leader, Swiftwing Kaital. "They are too strong, too organized. Our only hope is to keep running and hope they eventually lose interest." That evening, the first human colonists arrived on Kepler 442b. The colony ship Frontier landed near the research station, carrying 300 settlers ready to start a new life on this distant world. Colony Administrator Frank Turner stepped off the ship, followed by Security Chief Linda Hayes and Agricultural Specialist Tony Phillips. They looked around the alien landscape with the casual confidence of people who had done this many times before. "Nice planet," Frank commented. "Good atmosphere, decent gravity, lots of open space. Should be perfect for farming." Nina approached. The newcomers, her mind racing. The fleeting ones were terrified of something that hunted across star systems. But these humans had just arrived to set up a permanent settlement. "We have a situation," she began, explaining about the fleeting ones and their pursuers. Frank listened carefully, asking practical questions about numbers, capabilities, and timelines. When Nina finished, he turned to Linda. "Sounds like we've got a pest control problem," he said matter-of-factly. "Shouldn't be too difficult," Linda agreed. "We've dealt with territorial predators before." The fleeting ones couldn't believe what they were hearing. These humans were talking about fighting the stalkers like they were discussing removing weeds from a garden. "You do not understand," Swiftwing Kaital protested. "The stalkers cannot be defeated. They have hunted us across half the galaxy. They never stop." "Neither do we," replied Tony Phillips with a shrug. "That's kind of our thing." The stalkers arrived 2 days later. They came in sleek black ships that moved like predatory fish through space. Their forms were hidden behind advanced armor, but their intent was clear. They had come to claim their prey. What they found instead was something they had never encountered before, prey that refused to run. The human colonists had spent those 2 days preparing, but not for defense. They had set up tracking stations, supply caches, and communication networks. When the stalkers landed and began their hunt, they discovered they were no longer the hunters. Linda Hayes led the first tracking team. The stalkers moved fast, expecting their prey to panic and scatter. Instead, humans followed them methodically, mapping their movements and learning their patterns. "They're fast," Linda reported over the radio, "but they're not built for endurance. They rely on their prey running away in terror." Frank coordinated the operation from the colony base. "Copy that. Team 2, move to intercept Point Alpha. Team 3, cut off their escape route to the north." The stalkers quickly realized something was wrong. Their prey wasn't running. Instead, more humans kept appearing, always one step behind, never quite close enough to catch, but never falling behind either. "They're tracking us," reported Stalker. Hunt leader Kethmer to his pack. "But they're too slow to catch us." That was their first mistake. Humans weren't trying to catch them. They were wearing them down. For 3 days, the hunt continued. The stalkers ran from humans who jogged. They sprinted from humans who walked. They flew from humans who drove vehicles. No matter how fast the stalkers moved, humans were always behind them, patient and relentless. On the fourth day, the stalkers made their second mistake. They tried to rest. Tony Phillips found them hiding in a cave system, exhausted and confused. These apex predators had never been hunted before. They didn't know how to handle being prey. "This is Colony Base," he reported calmly. "I've got eyes on the targets." They looked tired. The stalkers had run out of energy. Their prey had run them to exhaustion, using the most basic hunting technique in human history: persistence hunting. They had been out-endured by a species that considered a 3-day hunt to be a pleasant weekend activity. "Attention, stalker vessels," Frank broadcast on all frequencies. "You are no longer welcome in this system. Leave now, or we continue the hunt." The response was immediate. The stalker ships lifted off and fled into hyperspace, their crews defeated by an enemy they couldn't understand. Swift wing. Kaital approached Nina with something that might have been awe. "In 47 years, no one has ever made the stalkers." "Retreat. How did you do it?" Nina smiled. "We didn't fight them. We just refused to stop following them. Eventually, they got tired and gave up." "You hunted the hunters," the fleeting one whispered. "We prefer to think of it as taking a nice long walk," Nina replied. "Humans are good at walking." Hidden observation posts recorded everything. The footage would be studied by xenobiologists across the galaxy, all trying to understand a species that could turn persistence into a weapon. The report that reached the Galactic Council was simple and terrifying. Humans do not just hunt. They are the concept of hunting given form. They will follow their prey across continents, across star systems, across time itself. They simply never stop. Frank Turner filed his colony report that evening, noting the successful resolution of a minor predator issue. He had no idea that his settlers had just defeated a species that had terrorized this sector for centuries. To him, it had been a simple matter of pest control. To the galaxy, it was proof that humanity represented evolution's most patient and relentless predator. Captain Emma Stone stood on the bridge of the deep space research vessel Endeavour, staring at the distress signal that had brought them to this remote system. The message was barely coherent, filled with static and what sounded like sobbing. "Can you clean that up?" she asked Communications Officer Tyler Johnson. Tyler worked his controls for several minutes before shaking his head. "Best I can do, Captain, but listen to this part." The speakers crackled to life with a voice speaking in broken galactic standard. "Please ... help us. They are in our minds, making us see ... making us feel ... we cannot continue." "Chief." Engineer Danny Clark looked up from his console. "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the fourth planet. Looks like a major civilization, but something's wrong with their power grid. It's fluctuating like crazy." "Set course for the planet," Emma ordered, "and get me everything we can on the species that sent that signal." Security Chief Maria Santos pulled up the files on her tablet. "They're called the Fragile Collective. Crystal-based life forms. Their bodies literally shatter if they experience too much emotional stress. According to the database, they're one of the most peaceful species in the galaxy. What could make them send a distress call like that?" Tyler wondered. They got their answer 3 hours later, when the Endeavour entered orbit around the crystal world. The planet below looked like it was dying. Great cities of living crystal stood empty and dark. The few energy readings they could detect were weak and fading. "I'm picking up a response to our hail," Tyler announced. "It's weak, but it's there." The face that appeared on the main screen was heartbreaking. The crystal being looked fragmented, cracks running through its transparent body like spider webs. When it spoke, its voice was barely a whisper. "You ... You should not have come. The mind breakers are here. They will destroy you as they have destroyed us. Who are the mind breakers? Emma asked gently. They came from the void between stars. The being replied, its form flickering like a failing hologram. They speak directly to our minds. They show us visions of failure, of loss, of hopelessness. Our people cannot bear such pain. We shatter. We die. Dr. Alex Turner, the ship's psychologist, stepped forward. How many of your people are left? Few. So very few. Most have gone dark. They saw no reason to continue existing. Emma felt a cold, anger building in her chest. A species that attacked minds and drove people to despair was exactly the kind of enemy she had trained her whole life to fight. Can you give us the location of these mind breakers? No, the crystal being said urgently. You must flee. They will sense your presence and attack your minds. You cannot resist them. No one can. We'll see about that, Emma said grimly. The mind breakers detected the human vessel within hours. They had been feeding on the despair of the fragile collective. For months, growing stronger with each crystal life they snuffed out. The arrival of new minds to break was a welcome surprise. The attack began subtly. Whispers at the edge of consciousness, suggesting that the mission was hopeless, that they would all die in the darkness between stars. For a species like the fragile collective, such thoughts were lethal poison. For humans, they were Tuesday. Anyone else hearing weird voices? Danny asked from engineering. Something about how we're all going to fail and die horribly? Yeah, replied Maria from security. Pretty standard doom and gloom stuff. Want me to trace the source? Tyler nodded from. Communications. Getting it too. Sounds like amateur hour psychological warfare. My drill sergeant in basic training was scarier than this. The mind breakers increased their assault, flooding human minds with visions of loss and failure. They showed Emma images of her crew dying, her mission failing, her ship burning in the Void.Emma studied the visions with professional interest. Interesting special effects, she commented. But they got the uniform regulations wrong in the death scenes. Also, our ship doesn't burn like that in vacuum. The mind breakers had never encountered resistance like this. Every species they had ever faced crumbled under the weight of induced despair. But humans seemed to treat psychological torture as a mild inconvenience. Dr. Turner was particularly fascinated. This is amazing, he said, taking notes while waves of mental anguish washed over him. They're trying to make us suicidal, but they don't understand human psychology at all. How so? Emma asked, casually ignoring a vision of herself being eaten alive by space monsters. They're showing us our worst fears and failures, Turner explained. But humans are the only species that evolved to transform trauma into strength. Every terrible thing they show us just makes us more determined to stop them. The mind breakers redoubled their efforts. They reached deeper into human minds, searching for the breaking point that every sentient species possessed. What they found instead broke their understanding of consciousness itself. Humans had evolved on a world that tried to kill them constantly. Their minds had been forged by ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, wars, and countless personal tragedies. The psychological attacks that shattered crystal beings only activated human survival instincts. I think I'm getting angry, Tyler reported calmly. These guys are trying to make me give up, and it's really starting to annoy me. Same here, Danny added. It's like they're insulting my ability to handle problems. That's just rude. Maria was already suiting up for an eval mission. Captain, I've traced their signal to a station about 10,000 kilometers away. Permission to go shut them up? Granted, Emma replied. But try to take some alive for questioning. The mind breakers watched in growing terror as the humans began hunting them through their own psychic network. Every mental attack only made the humans more focused, more determined, more dangerous. Impossible, transmitted Mindshaper Velthuk. To his collective, their minds should be broken. We have shown them despair beyond measure. They are not breaking, replied Thought Killer's Exmar. They are adapting. They are using our attacks to track us. For the first time in their species' history, the Mind Breakers felt fear. They were facing an enemy that grew stronger under psychological assault. That transformed mental torture into fuel for violence. Maria's boarding party reached the Mind Breaker station while psychic attacks raged around them. The aliens had expected broken, weeping creatures begging for mercy. Instead, they found humans in full combat gear, methodically disabling their equipment while discussing dinner plans. This neural disruptor array looks important, observed Corporal Pete Jackson, placing an explosive charge. Think we should blow it up? Probably, agreed Specialist Carol Davis. These guys have been giving me a headache for the past hour. The Mind Breakers surrendered within minutes. They had never faced a species that could fight while under mental assault. Their greatest weapon had become useless against an enemy that treated psychological warfare as background noise. Emma accepted their surrender with the same calm professionalism she brought to everything else. You'll be turned over to galactic authorities to face charges for genocide, she informed them. The fragile collective will recover now that you're gone. The Mind Breakers could barely comprehend what had happened. They had been defeated by creatures whose minds refused to break, whose spirits only grew stronger under pressure. How? Whispered Mindshaper Velthuk as he was led away in restraints. Emma shrugged. We're human. We don't give up ever. The rescue of the fragile collective became legend throughout the galaxy. Hidden cameras had recorded humans fighting while under psychic assault, treating mental torture as a minor annoyance. The footage would terrify military planners for generations. But to Emma Stone and her crew, it had been just another day at the office. They had encountered a problem, solved it, and moved on to the next mission. The fact that they had defeated a species that specialized in breaking minds was barely worth mentioning in their reports. Mission accomplished, Emma transmitted to Fleet Command. Local pirate problem resolved, proceeding to next assignment. Pirates. That's what she called a species that had driven an entire civilization to the brink of extinction through psychological warfare. The galaxy learned another terrifying truth about humanity that day. Their minds were not just unbreakable, they were weapons that grew sharper under pressure. Engineer Paul Wright wiped the dust from his goggles as he surveyed the mining site on Titan 7. The planet was rich in rare metals, but it came with problems that had defeated 3 previous colonization attempts. Still, his team had been making good progress until the locals showed up. Status report, he called to his crew as they gathered around the Noble Command Center. Demolitions expert Sarah Kim looked frustrated as she pointed toward the northern ridge. Those crystal formations we've been tracking are getting closer. They've adapted to every countermeasure we've tried. How close? Asked Dr. Josh Brown, the team's xenobiologist. He had been studying the strange life forms for 2 weeks, without much success. Close enough that I can hear them scratching at the perimeter fence, replied pilot Amanda Walsh. And they're learning. Yesterday, they couldn't get through our energy barriers. Today, they figured out how to drain the power cells. Paul frowned. The void spawn, as they had started calling them, were unlike anything in the databases. They looked like living shadows with crystalline cores, and they seemed to adapt to any environment within hours. Any word from the perfected ones? He asked. Josh shook his head. They're still holed up in their fortified city about 50 kilometers south. Been there for decades, apparently. They won't even respond to our communication attempts. That changed. Later that day, when a delegation of the perfected ones finally made contact, they arrived in an ornate transport that looked more like a work of art than a vehicle. Each member of the delegation was clearly designed for a specific purpose. The leader introduced himself as Prime Form Zarthik. His body was a perfect example of engineering, with enhanced muscles for strength, improved organs for endurance, and specialized limbs for manipulation. Behind him stood forms optimized for communication, calculation, and warfare. "You must leave this world immediately," Zarthik announced. "The void spawn will consume you as they have consumed all others who tried to settle here." Paul studied the alien delegation with interest. Each individual was perfectly suited for their role, but he could see the problem immediately. "How long have you been fighting them?" 37 years, replied Warform Kelmoth, whose body bristled with natural weapons and armor. "We have tried every strategy, every weapon, every defense. They adapt to overcome all our efforts." "What's your current approach?" Sarah asked. "We remain in our city," Zarthik explained. "Our barriers have held for 5 years now. It is the show. Only way to survive." Amanda exchanged glances with her teammates. "You've been hiding in a bunker for 5 years?" "It is survival," insisted Tech Form Plyvar, whose specialized limbs were designed for operating complex machinery. "We perfected our forms for specific purposes. The void spawn counter every advantage we possess." Dr. Brown was taking notes. Furiously, "Can you show us your combat footage? I'd like to see how these creatures adapt." The perfected ones shared their recordings, and Paul's team watched with growing understanding. The aliens fought with predetermined strategies based on their optimized forms. When Warform Kelmoth used energy weapons, the void spawn developed energy resistance. When Tech Form Plyvar deployed barriers, the creatures learned to bypass them. "I see the problem," Paul said after reviewing the footage. "You're too specialized. When they adapt to counter your abilities, you have nothing else to try." "Impossible," Zarthik replied. "Specialization is perfection. Each form serves its purpose with maximum efficiency." "But what happens when your purpose isn't enough?" Sarah asked. The answer came 3 hours later when the void spawn attacked the human mining site. The creatures had studied the human defenses and adapted accordingly. They moved through the energy barriers like they weren't there and began reshaping themselves to overcome each obstacle. Paul's team responded in a way that left the watching perfected ones speechless. "Switch to kinetic weapons," Paul ordered when the energy barriers failed. "Sarah, how much explosive do we have?" "Enough to level the whole site," she replied cheerfully. "Good. Josh, what did your scans show about their core structures?" "They're vulnerable to rapid temperature changes," the xenobiologist reported while setting up new equipment. "Also, they don't handle multiple attack vectors well. Amanda, prep the vehicles. We're going mobile." The void spawn had adapted to face stationary defenses and energy weapons. They had not adapted to face humans, who changed tactics faster than they could evolve. When the creatures developed resistance to explosives, Sarah switched to incendiary devices. When they adapted to fire, she used ice bombs. When they countered both, she started using sound weapons that Josh had improvised from mining equipment. "This is impossible," transmitted Tech Form Plyvar to the Perfected One's city. "They are using weapons we have never seen, weapons that should not exist." Amanda was driving mining vehicles in patterns that made no tactical sense until the void spawn tried to predict them. Then she switched to aircraft, then back to ground vehicles, then to powered armor that let her jump between them. "They are not adapting," Warform Kelmeth observed with growing fear. "They are out-adapting the adaptation." The truth was simpler and more terrifying. Humans weren't just adaptable, they were creative. Every time the void spawn evolved a counter to one strategy, the humans invented 3 new strategies that had never existed before. Dr. Brown discovered that the creature's adaptation process took exactly 47 minutes to complete. Armed with this knowledge, Paul's team began changing tactics every 30 minutes, never giving the void spawn time to catch up. "Defensive phase is complete," Paul announced over the radio. "Beginning offensive operations." The perfected ones watched in horror as the humans stopped defending and started hunting. They didn't use optimized forms or predetermined strategies. They used tools, creativity, and teamwork that changed faster than biological evolution could follow. Sarah built weapons out of mining equipment. Josh turned scientific instruments into sensors that tracked void spawn weaknesses. Amanda used construction vehicles as assault platforms. Paul coordinated everything while inventing new tactics in real time. "They are not fighting," whispered. "Prime form Zarthic. They are evolving their evolution." The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the void spawn had been driven from the mining site and scattered across the planet. The creatures that had trapped the perfected ones for decades had been defeated by 4 humans with a toolbox and an inability to stop changing their approach. "How?" Zarthic asked when he finally worked up the courage to visit the human site. Paul was already planning modifications to their original mining operation, incorporating lessons learned from the battle. "Simple," he said. "When something doesn't work, we try something else. When that doesn't work, we try something completely different. We keep changing until we find something that does work." "But your forms are not optimized for warfare," protested. "War form Kelmuth." "That's the point," Sarah explained while building her next weapon out of spare parts. "If we were optimized for one kind of fighting, we'd be stuck when that kind of fighting didn't work. Instead, we're optimized for figuring out new kinds of fighting." Dr. Brown was documenting everything for his research. "We call it human adaptability. We're not the best at any one thing, but we're the best at becoming better at things." Amanda summed it up perfectly. "You guys spent 30 years trying to perfect your defense against one enemy. We spent 30 hours learning how to attack that enemy in ways it had never seen before." The perfected ones sent an emergency transmission to the Galactic Council that night. Prime Form Zarthic's message was simple and terrifying. "We have encountered a species that adapts faster than adaptation itself. They do not perfect themselves for specific purposes. They perfect themselves for the purpose of becoming unperfectible. They are evolution turned into a weapon." Paul Wright filed his mining report the next morning, noting successful resolution of local wildlife issues. He recommended the planet for full colonization and suggested that future miners bring extra tools for creative problem solving. He had no idea that his routine pest control operation had redefined what the galaxy thought was possible in adaptive warfare. To him, it had just been another day at the office where flexibility and creativity solved a technical problem. The galaxy learned another terrifying truth about humanity. They didn't just adapt to challenges. They adapted their ability to adapt, creating a recursive nightmare that could out-evolve evolution itself. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called to order 3 times, but the representatives kept breaking into panicked discussions. Admiral Grace Morgan stood calmly in the center of the chamber, surrounded by energy barriers and enough firepower to level the city. She found the situation amusing. Ambassador Zixthara finally managed to restore order, her crystalline form flickering with nervous energy. "The Council recognizes Admiral Morgan of the human fleet." Grace nodded politely. "Thank you, Ambassador. I understand you have some concerns about my species." "Concerns?" Dr. Velinar's tentacles writhed in agitation. "Your people have terrorized half the galaxy in 6 months. Every species that encounters humans reports the same thing: unstoppable predators who cannot be reasoned with, defeated or escaped from." Grace raised an eyebrow. "That seems a bit harsh. We've been trying very hard to be good neighbors." "General." Klaxthar stepped forward, his rock-like body grinding with each movement. We have compiled evidence of human activities across known space. The testimony is overwhelming. The main display activated, showing footage from dozens of first contact scenarios. Grace watched herself and her fellow humans being described as apex predators, death world spawn, persistence hunters, and adaptive nightmares. As you can see, continued General Klaxthar, every species reports the same findings. Humans are the most dangerous predators in galactic history. Grace studied the compilation with professional interest. This is what you consider dangerous behavior? You fought psychic parasites while under mental attack, accused Peace Singer Hamtal, his plant-like form trembling. You hunted the stalkers across an entire star system. You defeated creatures that had terrorized civilizations for centuries. We helped people who asked for help, Grace replied simply. That's what neighbors do. Ambassador Zixthara's color shifted to deep red. This is exactly what terrifies us. You think this is normal behavior. You have no concept of how dangerous you are. The Council has reached a unanimous decision, announced Lamiinos, the energy being's voice crackling with static. Humanity must be contained. We propose a quarantine zone around all human space, enforced by joint galactic forces. Grace let the silence stretch for a moment before responding. I see. And if we refuse this quarantine? Then we will have no choice but to treat you as a galactic threat, General Klaxthar stated. Every species in this council will unite against humanity. Grace smiled, and every alien in the chamber felt their survival instincts scream warnings. That's an interesting proposition. Before you commit to that course of action, perhaps I should clarify something about human behavior. She gestured to the evidence display, still showing footage of human activities. Everything you've observed represents humanity at our most peaceful and restrained. We've been trying very hard not to frighten anyone. Dr. Velinar's translator made squeaking sounds. Peaceful? You call that peaceful? Absolutely, Grace confirmed. Let me give you some context. That footage shows humans being curious, helpful, and friendly. Jake Morrison was exploring peacefully when you captured him. Lisa Brooks was conducting routine research. Ryan Parker was on a rescue mission. She paused to let that sink in. Every single incident you've documented shows humans trying to help other species solve their problems. We hunt predators to protect prey. We track enemies to rescue victims. We adapt tactics to save lives. This is us being neighborly. The chamber fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems. The aggression patterns you detected in our biology? Those are our restraint systems working to keep us calm and peaceful. The pack-hunting instincts? Teamwork to help others. The persistence hunting behavior? Refusing to give up on people who need help. Ambassador Zixthara's form was now flickering between colors, so rapidly it hurt to look at. You're saying this terrifying behavior is you being ... nice? Exactly, Grace nodded. We've been deliberately holding back, trying not to seem threatening. Everything that's frightened you has been humans on our absolute best behavior. Peace Singer. Tal made a sound like wind through dead leaves. Then what do you look like when you're trying to be dangerous? Grace's smile widened. You really don't want to know. The chamber erupted in panicked discussions. Representatives argued in dozens of languages, while their translators struggled to keep up. Grace waited patiently for them to exhaust themselves. However, she continued when they finally quieted down, I think there's been a misunderstanding about this quarantine proposal. How so? Asked General Klaxthar warily. You're thinking about it backwards, Grace explained. The quarantine isn't to protect the galaxy from us. It's to protect us from accidentally terrifying our neighbors just by existing. She gestured around the chamber. Look at yourselves. You're all scared of humans who are trying to be helpful. Imagine how you'd react if we were actually trying to be scary. Dr. Velinar was making notes with shaking tentacles. You would accept containment willingly? Of course not, Grace laughed. But we might accept membership in this council, with some understanding about boundaries. Ambassador Zixthara leaned forward eagerly. What kind of understanding? Simple. We'll continue being peaceful explorers and helpful neighbors. In exchange, you acknowledge that we're being nice and treat us accordingly. Everyone gets what they want. And if we refuse? Asked General Klaxthar. Grace's expression didn't change. But every alien in the room felt the temperature drop. Then you'll discover what humans look like when we stop being nice. Trust me, General, you prefer us this way. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Council with all rights and privileges. The only condition was that humans would continue their current behavior patterns of peaceful exploration and mutual assistance. As Grace prepared to leave, Ambassador Zixthara approached her privately. Admiral, may I ask you something? Of course. Was that a threat? Grace considered the question carefully. No, Ambassador. It was a promise. We will always choose to be the friendly neighbors you've already met. The alternative is something. None of us want to explore. Why? Zixthara asked. What makes you so confident that we would prefer your peaceful behavior? Grace paused at the chamber door. Because the footage you showed me today? Those humans defeating your worst nightmares and most terrifying predators? They were all off duty. She left the chamber, leaving the Galactic Council to contemplate a species so dangerous that their relaxation activities involved hunting apex. Predators for Fun. Ambassador Zixthara sent a message to every government in known space that night. It contained only one line: keep the humans happy. 6 months later, Grace Morgan sat in her new office as humanity's permanent representative. To the Galactic Council. Her daily reports were remarkably boring, filled with routine trade negotiations and diplomatic meetings. She never mentioned that humans had become the galaxy's unofficial peace enforcement agency. When predator species threatened peaceful worlds, those worlds somehow ended up on human exploration schedules. When galactic criminals caused problems, they mysteriously encountered human research expeditions. The galaxy had found its place in the cosmic order. Humans explored, researched, and helped their neighbors. Everyone else tried very hard to make. Sure, humans never had a reason to stop being helpful. Grace filed her weekly report to Earth Command, noting successful integration into galactic society. She recommended continued peaceful contact with alien species, with the understanding that humanity's reputation for friendliness was now their most valuable diplomatic asset. After all, it was better to be feared for being too helpful than to be feared for being honest about what humans could really do when they tried.